You also have on your chairs and your tables the upcoming September schedule, which offers a wide variety of programs. And as you know, and as we are very proud of, the Clinton School Speaker Series brings in a diverse and wide range of views. We welcome different viewpoints on a wide range of subjects, and that is the hallmark of education, and we encourage that. We know in today's topic that immigration is a highly charged issue, one with strong feelings and views and opinions on varying sides, and that is a good thing. What is also a good thing is the advice given to us by NPR's Diane Rehm, which says civil discourse is a good thing. And so today I encourage you to express your views strongly but civilly, and to understand that people can agree to disagree on issues, because this issue is important and it's highly charged and people feel very strongly about it. Jim Gilchrist is the co-founder of the famous Minuteman Project, a group whose aim is to prevent illegal immigration across the United States southern border. He holds a BA in newspaper journalism from the University of Rhode Island, a BS in business administration from Caltech, and an MBA in taxation from Golden Gate University. He is a veteran of the Marine Corps, a recipient of the Purple Heart for the wounds he sustained with an infantry unit in Vietnam in 1967 to 1969. And as we welcome him to Arkansas and have him here today, let me also point out that in the 2008 presidential election, Jim supported former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee for president. Would you please welcome the founder of the Minuteman Project, Jim Gilchrist.
Thank you, Dean Rutherford. I've never been so impressed with President Clinton and his family until today. After the tour of that fabulous museum and library, I think I've become almost a friend of the president. I'm serious. I never realized that he was a little boy just like I was. And he had a childhood similar to my childhood. Only difference is that he got to go to Oxford, I didn't. I want to clarify something and get right to the point and define the Minuteman Project. What is it? Various definitions of the Minuteman Project, depending on whose perspective you're listening to. Essentially, we are a multi-ethnic immigration law enforcement advocacy group. We believe in an immigration policy that's based on a prescribed number of legal immigrants coming into the United States. We are not anti-immigrant. We believe also that that prescribed number of legal immigrants should be persons who possess certain skills and work sets that we need as a country to continue a prospering and flourishing nation for another 232 years. And also those people who come here must have the character and integrity to guarantee that we will last another 232 years as a civilized society. So all the misnomers about us being some kind of racist group or anti-immigrant is completely wrong. We are anti-illegal immigration for reasons that Congress concluded back in the late 1880s and early 1900s when they enacted our immigration policy. I created the Minuteman Project out of literal frustration. Living in Southern California, it became very clear to me that due to the dereliction of duty by our political governors, from mayors to state governors, and certainly from the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives, there was basically no enforcement of our immigration laws. So I started out on October 1st, 2004, to bring national awareness to this issue. I felt it was an issue that had a valid place in the open square of debate, and that unless someone brought forth this debate, there would never be a debate on this issue. And I'll get into the particular reasons and more salient reasons why I feel that way in a few minutes. So I brought approximately 1,200 Americans from all 50 states to the southeast border of Arizona. Blocked off a 25-mile stretch of the San Pedro River Valley, an area that was an ongoing conduit for at least a decade of about 25% of the illegal alien, human cargo, and drug cartels that had easy access to the United States. Why this particular 25-mile section of Arizona, I don't know, except that there was a river there, there was camouflage through triple canopy, it was less arid than other parts of the desert, and apparently a lot of people could not swim across the Rio Grande River in Texas because there was the danger of drowning. So they chose this area of Arizona. In 10 days, we literally shut down all the illegal activity. And although we spent about 35 days down there and successfully carried out the largest Minuteman assembly since the Revolutionary War. As a former newspaper reporter, I'm very, very big on the First Amendment, freedom of speech particularly. And saying that, I want to say that this is the very first educational environment I have been allowed to speak at without either being shouted down, forced off the stage, or had something thrown at me. And it's an honor to be here. You far exceed the rights accorded to speakers at Columbia University. And I'm serious, I no longer consider Columbia, like I used to, as an admirer of their journalism school, as an Ivy League school. The Clinton School of Public Service is more an Ivy League school than Columbia University ever could be. All right, enough bashing on Columbia. Still have a problem with, why did they say I was controversial, but Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was not? Can't figure that out. Anyway, it was from the First Amendment of the Constitution that I feel the Minuteman Project was born. My goal for the rest of my life is to bring national awareness to issues. After I get done with the immigration issue, I'm going to move on to something like urban blight. Fractured cities where buildings are crumbling and homeless strewn all over Los Angeles, for example. Matter of fact, you have some in Little Rock. I saw them yesterday. You have homeless people here. Nobody really thinks about that, but you do. And then after the urban blight is solved, I'll move on to tax reform. I'll always have something to complain about. You know, the porous border of Mexico is the most vulnerable of all our borders, more vulnerable than Canada, and certainly more vulnerable than our seaports and our airports, of course. And it's kind of a lawless wasteland. Has anybody here been to the Mexican-American border and spent much time this week? Okay, you know what I'm talking about, what it looks like, the ease of access into the United States, if you're willing to risk some discomfort, and sometimes that discomfort could very well mean your life. It's a very arid area in California, New Mexico, and Arizona. And if you're not careful, you will die of thirst. I want to talk a little bit about the ramifications of loose border enforcement. My opinion, the failure of our elected and appointed officials to enforce immigration laws poses a threat to the security, sovereignty, and prosperity of our nation, particularly to our middle class and our labor union workforces. By the way, I'm a registered Republican, but I'm pro-union. Go figure. Maybe I'm partly Democrat. I see the union workforces and a good, healthy workforce, even if it's not union, as necessary to sustain our nation as a healthy, prospering nation, a nation with a lowering crime rate, a nation that has a broad tax base, driving taxes for all of us down, and more people participating, more people having a reason to work, and a reason to raise a family, and a reason not to deal drugs or some other contraband to make a living. And that's going to come from a broad, healthy middle class. My personal opinion, again, is I see no net positive impact on the U.S. economy due to the importation of unlimited numbers of unskilled and low-wage laborers from foreign countries. Although it's very profitable for the persons or businesses exploiting the illegal alien worker, the overall cost to the United States taxpayer and the labor force far outweigh the benefits to the businesses engaged in that practice. For example, the cost of a pound of vegetables may be a few cents, for example, for a consumer due to their harvesting by a low-wage paid illegal alien, provided under prevailing wages, providing no benefits, provided no health care, none of the benefits that most American workers get. This makes them very attractive for those who engage in what I refer to as the 21st century slave trade, something this country has not seen since pre-Civil War era 1861 and before. And I'm very serious when I say this is a slave trade, because that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what it is. Many of us construe the illegal alien crisis as one issue. It's more than one issue. I'm going to give you a handful of examples. I've got several hundred issues that flow under this so-called one issue. I'm going to give you a few examples. One, non-economic, but touches the heart of most Americans, is if a proactive enforcement of our immigration laws would, number one, preserve our heritage, our culture, language, facilitate commerce and communication, provide a common bond for a unified population, would prevent hospital closures from bankruptcy. About 100 emergency rooms in California have been closed due to the overwhelming burden of a combination of its use by illegal aliens who have no alternative medicine, generally, and also impoverished Americans. You put them together, you've got 100 hospitals closed in California in the last 15 years, and probably more to come. Housing prices would stabilize with the cessation of homeowner flight that has caused an irrational demand for nonstop new housing and strip mall construction. Here's something that will apply to most of us: substantially more after-tax take-home pay for the tax-paying consumer to spend on travel, education, leisure, home improvements. entertainment, childcare, and a number of other choices that you would make by having about 25% more take-home pay rather than going to taxes. I mean a 25% reduction of your taxes, not a 25% increase in your payroll. We'd have a significant drop in crime, especially violent offenses and identity fraud. How many have been a victim of identity fraud in the last year? Only one, two. Only two admitting it. Decline in health, auto, and other insurance rates by 25 to 30% across the board, the amount that it costs to cover uninsured drivers. I've also been hit by uninsured illegal aliens, had the whole front end of my car taken off. But again, illegal aliens are not the only ones who drive without insurance. They're not the only ones who commit crimes. They're not the only ones who are on welfare and rely on the tax base to provide for them. But they are a pretty good size and a pretty good bulk, because we're talking about millions of people on these systems. My favorite, proactive law enforcement on this issue would eliminate the slave labor trade that enables those to employ illegal aliens off the books to criminally evade federal and state employment taxes that's levied and actually paid by law-abiding American citizens on a routine basis. Now, here's something that would probably appeal to all you students. 40 years ago in California, you could attend a state university or college at almost no cost or zero cost for tuition. Today, it's a minimum of $4,000 to $8,000 a year. If we were to take the 15 or part of the $15 billion a year that's estimated, 10 to 15 billion, I'm going with the higher figure, that's estimated to support the impoverished illegal alien population of California, and put that into the university systems, just a part of it, we would return to a no-cost post-secondary education, right up through your master's degree. I was one of the fortunate ones. I had the GI Bill that paid about half of my cost of going to college for the colleges that I had to pay for. But had I not been a military veteran and had not had the GI Bill, I never would have been able to afford college. I don't think. I would like to see something like that, not only statewide, but nationally. I think it's really important, and it makes it a lot easier for a 17 or 18-year-old to want to go to college and get educated, because you're a lot different at age 22 with a bachelor's degree behind you than you are when you were 18 without that education. You think a lot differently. You're a lot more mature and certainly a lot more productive. And finally, I'd like to see those funds that are used to fund the illegal alien benefit programs to provide more medical and quality of life support for our disabled and our elderly citizens and our retirees. These tax burdens, or these opportunity costs to U.S. taxpayers, in my opinion, would be more appropriately carried by the foreign nations from which the illegal alien populations have come. Now, these might sound like some harsh words or concepts to some of you. I understand that. Some of them are harsh even to me, even though I speak them. I have to ask you, except for life-saving treatment, under what authority are we required to house, shelter, feed, educate, and medicate the world's impoverished population? Now, it's a free country. If that's what you want, that's fine. Personally, it's not what I want. But I don't want a foreign national to die either, and I don't want a foreign national to live in misery. One of the most euphoric things I've seen happened 3 days ago. 100,000 Mexican nationals assembled in Mexico City to do exactly in Mexico City what the Minuteman Project and similar groups, activist groups in the United States, do on a daily basis. They finally got up, stepped forward, assembled, and demanded that their political governors address their needs. I refer to them as Mexican Minutemen and Mexican Minutewomen, and they've got my support. Back to, under what authority are we to provide for the entire world? By taking from you, or you, or you, and giving to them. Who gives us that authority? I feel that president invites the world's population to enter the United States at will and select from a menu of entitlement programs originally intended for U.S. citizens. This may sound selfish, but it's realistic. Shouldn't we, as a unified country, consider the needs of our people, our impoverished, our disabled children, our elderly, our infrastructures, our crumbling bridges? Shouldn't that be a priority? But if this is the intention of our U.S. Congress, then it should overtly enact legislation forcing reluctant U.S. taxpayers to pay for an in-house global welfare system for any of the 6.5 billion people in the world's population, half of which are impoverished, living below the poverty line. That's 3.3 to 3.4 billion people. And if our U.S. Senate wants us to take care of them, then they should let us know that and be right up front. We're going to tax you till there's nothing left to tax from you so that we can feel good about ourselves living in our ivory towers in Washington, D.C., us 100 senators, and take care of the world's problems. My blatant personal opinion about the U.S. Senate is that they are the biggest barrier to immigration law enforcement, bigger than the President of the United States, bigger barrier than the House of Representatives. And other than Democrat Byron Dorgan or Republican Jeff Sessions, I cannot name you any other U.S. senators who truly represent the United States of America. I can name 98, if I could remember their names, who certainly represent themselves. And they represent their own damn arrogance. Hundreds of billions of dollars could be saved annually by eliminating the extraordinary costs of sustaining an impoverished illegal alien population, could be diverted to programs, which I mentioned before, for the betterment and enhancement of our nation's infrastructure, including improvements to roads, bridges, attention to inner-city blight, and a serious reduction in various excise, sales, and utility taxes, and perhaps even some gasoline taxes. Simple enforcement of existing U.S. immigration laws, in my opinion, is a panacea for many of our domestic problems relative to the illegal immigration, and also certainly a panacea, a cure-all to the risk of terrorist attack by international saboteurs. United States Border Patrol claims that they have apprehended in our southern border alone, in fiscal year 2005 and 2006, each of those years, 1.25 million illegal entrants from all around the world. That's in a 12-month period. Border Patrol also admits that they only apprehend 1 out of 4 to 1 out of 5, and admits that approximately 5 to 6 million illegal aliens enter the United States every year just from our southern border, They also come in from our northern border, just not in the volume that they come in for the southern border. Some come in through our seaports. I don't think any come in from our airports. They're pretty well secured. DHS has done a good job. The carnage in Mexico, Central America, politically, economically, socially, is certainly the largest driving forces creating this exodus from south of the border into the United States. That with the geographic location and the ease of stepping across our border, many places there's nothing there. Some places there's 4 strands of rusted barbed wire that you either cut and walk through or you spread like this and duck through. In some places there is a 10 or 12 foot metal wall made out of Vietnam era landing plates for aircraft in the jungle, which are tunneled under very easily. It takes about 20 minutes so you can dig the clay, dirt, and the dust away and crawl right through. Using the estimates of the U.S. Border Patrol, approximately 5 to 6 million illegal aliens enter the United States annually. Each week, it's the equivalent of 4 reinforced Army divisions. I'm using military terms here because I want you to see, to get a perspective, to see how many people this is. Or about 75,000 persons per week from all around the world through a 1,961-mile porous U.S.-Mexico border. Daily, the Border Patrol estimates, this is 2 years ago, 10,000. I think it's closer to 12,000 per day coming in. Annually, the size of this invasion explodes to 208 Army divisions. If you could picture that. I really can't fathom that except in numbers. That's about 5 to 6 million people a year, illegal aliens entering the United States, occupying its territory and not leaving. No one knows who they are, where they are, or what their intentions are. We know many of them are coming here to work, but they're still here against the will of our people, our government, our rules of law. And their exodus into the United States continues the carnage in their homelands. Based on this trend, it's possible that over 6 million illegal aliens have come into the United States during 2007. In 2008, you can expect 7 million. Thereafter, perhaps 10 million per year. Do you see where this is going? 10 years ago, I did not believe these numbers. But 4 years ago, when I started doing the research and getting involved in this issue, it was pretty obvious I, too, had turned a blind eye to this problem. Again, we are free to accept this and let evolution take its course, or we are free to make a stand, using the First Amendment as your tool and bringing your grievance to your political governors to bring this nation under the rule of law. I prefer the latter. As the resources for our law enforcement, Immigration Customs Enforcement, and Border Patrol weaken, the invasion, notice I'm using the word invasion, I'll get to that in just a second. The invasion increases, continually weakening our law enforcement to the point where law enforcement is literally pointless. It is incapable of enforcing the law. When you have 2 policemen in a neighborhood with 400 gang members shooting each other, you might as well just let them shoot each other, because there's no way that 2 policemen are going to turn that neighborhood of 400 gang members into a civilized society, which is why Los Angeles Police Department and the Sheriff's Department put about 800 law enforcement officers into a neighborhood like that to clean it up, and it's done pretty rapidly. There are 2 common ways to seize a country: by blunt military invasion, bayonets fixed, gun barrels blazing, or by incrementally transferring a foreign nation's population into the target nation. In this case, the target nation would be the United States, thereby overwhelming the host country, the United States, by sheer numbers. In my opinion, our country is the victim of the latter method. I refer to it as a Trojan horse covert invasion that's being carried out over a few decades, not as some kind of a plan by some globalist leaders, more because of the United States' lack of willingness, not the electorate's lack of willingness. Let's be very clear. By the lack of willingness, predominantly of the United States Senate, including your senators from Arkansas, my senators from California, who cavalierly neglect the fact that we are a nation not only governed by its people, but governed under the rule of law. And that is what has kept us a cohesive, unified, civilized nation for 232 years. That's exactly in the vision of our founding fathers. I have a time check. Okay, I'm over. Just one last thing. I'm going to end it with 3 words, and we'll go right to questions. E pluribus unum. Thank you. It's been an honor to speak here, and this is the very first university I've spoken at, or a school of education, that truly respected freedom of speech. For that, I will be always indebted to the school. Thank you very much.
We have some time for some questions, so would people please raise your hands. And
there's no sacred territory. Ask me anything you want, any kind of rhetoric you want.
All right, here, let me give you.
The last year has been kind of a shaky one for the Minuteman Project, and with lawsuits, and
Yes.
You've actually expressed some regret, and I want to quote from you from the Orange County Register. You said, "I found after 4 years in this movement, I very well may have been fighting for people with less character and less integrity than the open border fanatics I've been fighting against. And that is a phenomenal indictment of something I've created." Can you tell us how you would have redesigned it to reach these goals that you're trying to reach, and how you would have done it differently with the Minuteman Project?
Yes, better screening process, probably moving a little slower. What happens in any activist movement, whether it's Code Pink, whether it's the anti-war, the pro-abortion, the anti-abortion, whatever, Minuteman Project, all these groups have similar problems. Let's say I'm representing a conservative right side of the immigration issue. My adversaries are representing the left. Well, on both sides, you've got extremists. On my side of the argument, you've got some very dangerous, violent people. You've got racists, incurable racists. On the left side, you have an equal amount of incurable racists, violent people. To put it in a simple perspective that might be oversimplified, on the right, you've got Tim McVeigh, who will kill you or blow your building up to get his way. But on the left, you've got Ted Kaczynski or Charlie Manson, educated and non-educated, who are very violent and who will do anything to get their way. And those are the extremists that I would like to keep out of the debate, but I don't want to prevent them from exercising their free speech. But they are troublemakers, and they are very, very dangerous. And that's my opinion. And I meant exactly what I said. I do think that some of the people who have infiltrated into my organization or this movement, it's not my movement, have sinister motives, whether it be greed for money or delusions of grandeur. But they are very dangerous. Yes?
Right here, Alan.
First of all, I'd like to welcome you to Arkansas, and I hope you get a chance to see some of our state.
I have.
The description and the worldview that you have on immigration doesn't bear a lot of resemblance to our reality here in Arkansas. I was making some notes. You talk about crime, for example, and this is something that's often attached to immigrants and illegal immigrants. And according to the Department of Correction here in Arkansas, 1.5% of our population is Latino, and that makes up the vast majority of our immigrants here. And about half the Latinos here in Arkansas are here unauthorized and without papers. But the Latinos make up 4% of our population, but only 1.5% of them, only 1.5% of the population of the Department of Corrections.
Right.
Our 4%, right. So what I'm saying is they're underrepresented.
Yes, they are.
In
Very
terms of
minuscule.
crime. And in fact, the police chiefs here have said they're more likely to be victims of crime rather than to be the perpetrators. And this has been true, by the way, going all the way back to the Irish in the 19th century, is that immigrants, illegal or otherwise, tend to be self-selecting, the people that come here, and they're not perpetrators of crime. You also make these people sound like they've come here to be taken care of. And according to the Rockefeller Foundation, here in Arkansas, the group of people with the highest employment rate, higher than natural-born, native-born white men, are illegal aliens. They have the highest employment rate of any group of people here. And they contribute $19 million a year more to the state taxes than they consume in state services. So your numbers don't bear out anything like what we're experiencing here. And finally, I heard someone make a comment a while ago, you were talking about the slave trade. I don't think it works out the way you say when you have 9 million slaves trying to break into the plantation. And that would be, if you say that all we're doing is embarking here on a slave trade, it just doesn't bear any resemblance to our reality.
Sounds to me like you're trying to defend the slave trade mentality, and also I would have to say, sir, that based on your comments, there are two kinds of Americans. Those who pledge their allegiance to the almighty greenback and all the power and influence it can buy, and those who pledge their allegiance to the United States of America and all the priceless principles for which it stands. And I think I'm the latter. But I have to give you credit on the 1.5% of 4%. That is an extremely low number.
So you question my patriotism in the spirit of civil discourse?
No, I question your motives. I think you're a greedy bastard. If you're supporting the slave trade, you definitely are a greedy bastard.
All right, okay. All right, civil discourse from both the speaker and the participants here. Let's go to the next question. Marcella?
The first argument that you made was that your group is not a racist group, and it was the first thing that you said when defining your group. But the first and most important, in your words, reason why we need to stop illegal immigration was to preserve our heritage and culture. Mm-hmm. To me, as a proud Latin American woman, I have to say, to me, that is a white male-dominated, ethnocentric position that really excludes the idea of what America is, a unified country bound from a tapestry of many different colors. How do you defend that you're not a racist group when you make arguments that are inherently racist?
Number one, two of my key spokespersons, national spokespersons, are not white. One is an African-American female, Cheryl Burns. She's the liaison for community relations, speaks nationally. The other is Vietnam veteran Raymond Herrera, Mexican-American, 100% Mexican-American, 200% American. He speaks on behalf of Latinos and Latinas. I have to ask you, are you a member of La Raza? Do you support La Raza? Well, since you brought up the topic and you opened this debate, let's go right to the heart of the beast. La Raza is the largest organized racial supremacy group in the United States today. Its mantra, along with Mecha, is for the Hispanic race, sometimes it's interchanged, for the Mexican race, everything, for those outside of our race, nothing. Lady, you could not get more racially supremacist than that.
Not in effect in Arkansas. La Raza doesn't exist in our state.
La
So you're
Raza
talking
is a
about
very
something-
recognized organization.
La Raza, but other people have questions, so
But
please.
answer your question, no, we're not a racist group.
Let's move on so we can have more people ask questions, please. And let me just say, in the spirit of this, let's try not to make statements. Let's ask questions so a lot of people can participate, okay? That's what this form's about, right here. Yeah.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your service to our country in the Marine Corps.
No statements, please. Let's go ahead. Let's get the questions.
And, my question is, you touched on this in your speech, that one of the big roots of our problem is civil unrest and economic problems south of the border. What foreign policy initiatives do you think that we could pursue as a country to help address this problem and maybe solve the root of this problem rather than the symptoms?
It'll be brief. Good question. I'm not an expert in that area. I suggest you ask the President of the United States or the future President that exact question, and that was a very good question because I'm all for you. These countries need our help.
Next question, right here. This lady in the middle row, right here. Right. Wait, we need the microphone, please.
How can we determine just how much crime is being committed in Arkansas by illegal aliens and what it's costing us?
Refer to the gentleman over here. Sir, if those numbers are valid, they are very, very low. They are very respectable numbers. In California, it's completely different. 29 to 30% of those incarcerated are illegal aliens in our jails and prisons. 95% of Los Angeles County murder warrants outstanding are against illegal aliens from all around the world, predominantly from south of the border because that's where most of the entrants are coming from due to the carnage south of the border. I'm not saying they're horrible people because they're coming up here. I'm just saying that the facts play out that 85% of those coming here are from south of the border, 15% from Russia, China, Canada, wherever.
All right, question. Yes, sir, right at the back. Have the mic, please.
With all due respect, I will say my wife is Latina, so forgive me if I don't agree with you. But
My son-in-law is Mexican.
Arkansas. Welcome to Arkansas. You're making an argument from my perspective. How is your argument different from that argument that was made against the Irish, Italians, Germans, Asians? We're a nation of immigrants. How is the argument that you're making right now, many of the details of which seem to echo those arguments from the past, how is it different?
Immigration
would you agree, one last thing, would you agree, had you been around in the 1840s, would you be making this argument against the Irish?
No, in the 1840s, 170 years ago, of course not. Different environment, different time. It's 170 years ago. And we cannot live in the past. We have to live what's happening to our nation currently. And we have to decide, as a people, do we want this to occur? There's a big difference between our population in 1840 and our population and our resources in 2008.
Have a question right over here.
Thank you.
Have a question right over here.
And my son-in-law is Mexican.
Go ahead. Come on.
Served in the military, likes me.
You mentioned skill sets, that the immigration laws should contain certain skill sets. I don't know that much about immigration laws. Has that been done in the past, and how would you do that?
Department of Labor estimates as to what type of workers do we need that we cannot fill. I am all for importing workers here to, if we need rocket scientists to build rockets because our universities are not producing them, then that's what we have to do. But I can assure you, of the approximately 30 million illegal aliens currently in the United States today, they're not all here to pick our strawberries. Many are here to pick our pockets. And that's my blatant personal opinion.
Question right here.
Thank you. I would like to know how Senators Dorgan and Sessions are different from the other 98 in your opinion, and if you consider in the two examples you gave of the way countries are taken over, if you consider what we've done in Iraq parallel to your second way of stating that a country is taken over other than people just coming in.
Iraq, I'm not qualified to speak on. It is a police action just like Vietnam. I have to say, I am against, I don't want to say anything, and the reason I do not want to put my comrades in arms in harm's way, and I might have just done that. I don't want to take a side on Iraq. I am very disappointed in what we did in Vietnam. It was an unnecessary war. I am essentially anti-war. I do believe we should be in Afghanistan. I will say that. And you're right. You could say that's an invasion of military. Yes, that could be. And well, if someone wanted to take over the United States, well, they could do it by transferring their population into the United States, unassimilate, and literally morph the United States into their culture, their language, their nation. Or they could come over with bayonets fixed. Let's say China wanted to take over the United States. They'd hit California, 3 million Chinese Marines. I'd be history. You wouldn't have to worry about me anymore. But there's those two ways, essentially, of seizing a nation. And it's been done over history, century after century.
So
I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question. Specifically, what do you want? Ask me exactly what you want me to say, or what you want to have answered.
I'm trying to find out, and I appreciate the two ways you said a country can be taken over.
Yes.
I understand clearly what you're saying about the immigration problem, that's the way America is potentially being taken over. So your second way of a country being taken over was at the end of a bayonet. Mm-hmm. And I'm just asking, is that what we did as a country when we went to Iraq? That's all.
To Iraq?
Yes.
I would have to agree with that. It was a military police action for the purpose of seizing a nation from Saddam Hussein, who's no different than probably a Hitler mentality or anybody else, Pol Pot, Genghis Khan, and a number of... Yeah, that's certainly an invasion. We have seized that country. We've sort of gotten control. Militarily, we have control. Politically, we don't have control, or religiously. Yeah, I have to agree. Yeah, that was an invasion.
We have time for one more question. Dean DePippa.
Mr. Gilchrist, I'm just a little confused. Maybe you can help me.
Yes, sir.
If you believe, as I do, that undocumented workers are being exploited by the companies who hire them, then why wouldn't the comprehensive immigration bill that would have brought that population out of the shadows have actually helped solve that problem? Why oppose comprehensive immigration then?
It would have solved that problem with the waving of a congressional magic wand. You're all citizens. You all have dual voting rights in your homeland. You're American citizens. Now, let's get ready for the next 250 to 500 million more to come, and then we'll give them amnesty too. That is the problem. I'm staying at a strict law enforcement position, and the reason, and I talked to the dean last night, I can't say I'm a diehard on throw everybody out, but I cannot move towards comprehensive immigration reform without a very solid assurance that we're going to have immigration law enforcement that's really going to be enforced and really going to work. And I can't say, well, if there are 30 million illegal aliens, let's just let them stay here. Yes.
That be the appropriate moral and legal response and deal with enforcement also? Because it seems to me your rhetoric, equating this with the slave trade, would drive people to conclude that those slaves should be liberated.
Right.
And so it seems
Free
to
the
me
slaves.
that there's just no connection between both parts of your argument.
I see a big difference between 1865 and 2008, and it may be an unacceptable answer for you, sir, but it's a very valid question. I will have to say that I don't have the appropriate answer for you on that specific question, but it is a very valid issue, and thank you for bringing it up.
Gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to Jim Gilchrist. And as you'll note, we've got a whole series of programs coming up in September. I also want to tell you that our October schedule is the most packed of any month we've ever had at the Clinton School. So that will be announced. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. And again, education is about hearing all sides, even if people like me happen to disagree with the speaker.